We should be live now, and if we're not, then I apologize. Um, so I do this I think this is like every like month and a half or so that I end up doing this, putting it together, and it's building. Let me make sure that we have everything here. There's OBS. It's basically putting together and building subclasses for my current D&D homebrew. I like to share it, go through the process, and also I find it kind of fun to do this. The last couple of times I've done it, we've gotten people who are building their own stuff who, dropped in and, shot around some ideas, and people who just kind of enjoy watching people work. So maybe it's not as interesting as I think it is. But anyway, last time we made the Void Shield domain for clerics, and I wanted to start with how actually I think almost all of these, except for the first one, started. Is I messed up building this last time, and here's how we had to fix it. Down here, let me zoom in on the domain spells. I messed up when we made the original draft, and we used spell levels, not cleric levels, for assigning the domain spells. Which is, if you were here that time, why it was not making sense. I was like, whoever gets to ninth level spells, and why is that? Why is your domain spell like skipping a bunch of things? And this now front loads it better, is correct, and has some slightly better on theme spells. So uh, for cleric domains, it's important to do your domains right. So the next thing that we want to do is go back here to D&D Beyond, and I like to just sort of do this as a quick overview of what we've done before so that we know kind of what we're getting into this time. So here are our uh, previous Aryssa subclasses. We've got a rogue, a bard, fighter, barbarian, warlock, and then we did a cleric last week. Um, if you need a specific link to any of these, I think I can get those for you, but the name should be enough. These are all publicly shared. So if you're curious, want to see how it works, go right ahead. There's a little bit of world building in some of them. I might at some point revisit the rogue and the fighter to try and tie them a little more closely to the setting, which is one of the things I think is really important if you're going to build a subclass. You need to very carefully and clearly align your what the subclass does with the world building, even if it's just in fluff, even if it's not mechanical at all. Because otherwise, what's the point of building it except for a mechanical reason? So there are our previous builds, and again, all of them are still very much a draft. And as you can see, I have no idea how to name things with a version number, and so we'll just ignore that fact. So the first thing I say every time we go through this creating a subclass, there was actually a post on the Beyond boards. It's called the Creating Subclasses Guide. Strongly recommend before you build anything, you give this a read, because assigning your features at the right level is important both from a balance perspective and because it helps you see what exactly a class gets from their subclass. For example, just like looking over this, you see very quickly that, for example, clerics, warlocks, and sorcerers are pretty heavily defined by their subclass, right? They get it at level 1, they get a significant amount of features, 4 or 5. I think the only one that beats them out is the fighter. Oh no, fighters only got 5. I thought they got 6. Anyway, so that's important to know that you can go a little more wild with sorcerers and warlocks, and even druids get theirs a little bit earlier than everyone else because it's a lot more pivotal to that class identity. Whereas everyone who's getting in at level 3, it still is going to be a huge part of their identity, right? But look at the bard, 3 6 14. Your subclass doesn't have as big of an impact on what you can do as a bard as it does on, say, again, your druid, as we'll see, rangers, rogues, especially rogues and fighters, where that level 3 choice might give you spell casting. So it's just good to know how much power budget a class has given to their subclass. And again, 5th edition, while better balanced than 3.5 in some ways, it's still not perfectly balanced. You just have to look at things like comparing like the champion fighter to the battle master just from core to see that it's not a perfectly balanced world out there in the world of D&D. But that helps us sort of segue into talking about the ranger. Probably one of the least well balanced classes in core, and again, the ranger I think gets a really bad rap. Yes, it's poorly balanced, and things like primeval awareness and their favorite enemy and terrain only really come up if you work with your GM and you're like, hey, before I say that I'm really good in the desert, are we ever going to the desert in this campaign? Which is an odd thing to, have a knock on a class, right? Like, you should know what story you're going to tell before you try and insert a main character into it. Yes, you should. And it's still a bad design because you should be able to just make your ranger sit down at a table and not lose a chunk of effectiveness, which is mechanically one of the things we're going to try and fix with this ranger subclass we're going to be building once we get through all of this boring preamble. So here we are. Rangers get things at 3, 7, 11, and 15, which I'm going to just have a Word doc on the notepad document on the other screen where I just sort of cut and save things so that I remember and that we can close this tab once we're done. So Rangers 3, 7, 11, and 15. Not a lot of features, but if we look at what some of the other Ranger archetypes get from, I think the Beastmaster is a pretty terrible example because that Ranger's Companion, that's a whole lot of text for not a lot of fancy improvements. It doesn't really capture the imagination of being, like the Beastmaster or whatever. And then you look, share spells is pretty good. That's a really neat thing, but by level 15, you're expecting a lot more. Bestial Fury, all of this. This is like the low end, I think, of the Ranger subclasses. I think generally agreed that I want to say it was Hunter. Yeah, I think Hunter is generally agreed to be one of the better subclasses, and that's because it does two things that subclasses I think should do, which is it gives you options and it lets you get better at what you want to be better at without putting you into too much of a niche where you're useless, which, in almost any adventure, any well-written adventure or adventure written in the way wizards write adventures, all of these things are going to be potentially good choices. You'll almost always fight larger creatures. You're almost always going to be attacking, multiple weaker, smaller creatures at some point in the adventure. So this is probably the Hunter, is probably a good baseline. This is the sort of power level you should be looking at for a Ranger subclass, which, again, it's all available here if you have Beyond, so hopefully that's not going to be a problem. But the next thing to do when you're building a subclass is get familiar with what your regular class features are. And where's our nice, neat chart? So, fighting style and spellcasting, we don't really want to mess with for the Ranger. They get it, they're good, and we don't really need to mess with it. If you looked at a lot of the Tasha stuff, they were trying to do more with primeval awareness, and I think that's one of the things I want to focus on. And again, since we have 3, 7, 11, and 15, hide in plain sight comes at 10, and so we could do something with that. And the same thing with land stride at 8. But by level 15, you've gotten all of your good stuff, right? So now we're familiar enough with all of this, and we can now start looking at what kind of Ranger do we want to build. One of the things you'll notice if you look at a lot of the Ranger subtypes, almost all of them, I don't want to call them selfish, but are, primarily built around the Ranger being better, which is good because again, Ranger's a pretty weak class. They need a lot from their subclass. So we're gonna do something a little bit different than that though, and try and make ourselves a Ranger who's going to still do damage. It's still their primary role in that pillar of adventure and combat. They are still, damage per round. They're there to put out damage and stop bad guys. But we're going to give them a little more party utility there, and we're going to give them something that the Ranger is missing, which is some entry point into the social pillar. The exploration pillar, Wizards does a really bad job of it. Most adventure writers do a really bad job of it because exploration is something that players always say that they love exploration. They love, finding things on the map and doing things, but they hate all of the game mechanics that go along with it. They hate having to, know the difference between their, perception and search rolls. They hate, the difference between investigate and, they hate that they need to be able to unlock things. They hate that, strength matters and how much they can carry. They don't like to think about bulk or weight. The spell Good Berries exists. The Outlander background exists to basically make it so you don't have to worry about rations in your adventures. So all of the cool stuff that the Ranger brings through Natural Explorer, even things like Land Stride, doesn't help because the exploration pillar is so poorly realized right now in 5th edition D&D. And so all of that power budget that the Ranger has to making that easier for the party is kind of a wasted power budget in my mind. You don't get much from it. So, with that in mind, we now have mechanical goals for our Ranger. We want them to support the party a little bit more and have an in so that during these social encounters, they have a role in the party. So, that's all of the mechanical stuff. Like I said before, your mechanics and fluff should be really put together, married together. So let's look at the fluff in the Lands of Aryssa document, which is here. Yes, it's there. In the Lands of Aryssa document, that lets us get an idea of what Rangers are. So if you've not seen this document before, this is what I call my my homebrew world book. It's basically eventually going to get turned into a PDF that I'll just put out there for people to, pick up and use. Right now, it's like 60% there, I'd say. It's missing most of, where'd my mouse go? Most of this stuff here at the bottom. The archetypes, and then the two things that I really want to do at some point, which is encounters and adventure in Aryssa. So let's go down to class in Aryssa, which should be on page 30. Let's just Control F, class on Aryssa. So this just gives us a chance to get an idea of what all of the basic classes are. And there's nothing all that exciting about Rangers, right? They're some weird fighter rogue mix with spell casting, and that's essentially what the world book here tells us too. So they can be part of pretty much any group. They might be independent adventurers. They might have trained in what's the Haven of Might, which is essentially the military arm of our main faction. So nothing all that exciting there. Which brings us back then to, okay, if we don't have a group in the world that they're related to, we should look at, the various locations. The Free State of Doral, which is our main city. Or we should look at, how does all of this work together? Unlike usual, where I kind of shoot from the hip, I've already decided what we wanted to do on this one. Mainly because, again, I've written this over the past 7 or 8 years now. I don't know why, at some point, storm giants became creatures without free will who just exist in the what's called the ascent of chaos, to bring it to order, to keep it from spinning out of cosmic control. I don't know when that got created, but it's a neat idea that there are these beings of essentially pure law who are a hive mind. And my thought is everyone else in the world needs some way to interact with these telepathic giants. And that brings us now to what our, there it is, notepad, what our subclass is going to be, which is, we're going to now create ourselves a ranger, and we're going to create from scratch, and then we're going to come here so that we can sort of steal what the steal what the text should look like. So name, we just want to make sure everything is staying the same. We're going to call this the Aryssa Envoy of Storms because these rangers are going to essentially be natural explorers who are essentially that. They're envoys to the storm giants. So, fluff-wise, they're going to get psionics in some mechanical fashion. We have a very loose idea at the moment. And they're going to be negotiators with this incredibly alien thing to most mortal races that are very strongly independent, very, even the very lawful societies still have the concept of individuality. And so these envoys of storms are very used to dealing with alien minds and communicating across that. It's not even really a cultural divide, right? Like it's a very philosophical, metaphysical divide between, the very concept of individuality to we are not people. We're just a force of, literally a force of, again, in the D&D cosmos, a force to prevent, that cosmic balance from getting out of whack. So, there we go. Short description, and then the description. So here we are. And I always forget which one is which, so we'll go ahead, hit create so that we can see what text we put in which area. Did we mess that up? We may have messed that up. Sure wish I could just hit edit. There we go. View details page. I'm going to hit create new version. Subclasses. Someday I'll go through and I'll look at what a lot of other people have made because a lot of people make better stuff than I do. So there we go. Basic information. I like to just template all of my things the same. So we just literally steal these general templates. Then we're going to go right over it. And a lot of this is going to be stuff we've already told you, right? So Envoys of Storms are official, or at times unofficial, individuals within Aryssa who have dealings with the storm giants. And let's make sure that we get this right, because nothing is worse than when I write something that's wrong. And created the Ascent of Storms. And now we'll go back, and now let's just delete this, right? Because we don't need any. Yeah, because all of the rest of that we don't need. So let's just delete this extra version so that we just don't have version bloat. We have dealings with the storm giants on the Ascent Storms. These envoys are specially trained to deal with the alien minds of storm giants and to telepathically communicate with the storm giant hive mind safely and effectively. They're trained to handle the dangers associated with the ascent storms and are experts at at traveling traveling and manipulating the, the chaos associated with the storms to their benefit. All right, that's all just fluff. It's a very short description. You read that, you get a good idea mechanically where this class is geared. Down here, the description is a little bit longer. The Envoy of Storms is a ranger that focuses on the combat sphere. Again, this is all templating. I may have missed it, done it wrong on some of the other subclasses, but the and see, we said spheres, it should be pillar. I like the idea of those 3 pillars of adventure, and I think it should help, especially for someone like me who's not a professional designer. It helps me think, okay, your subclass is good at this, but they should be able to contribute to the other 2 pillars in some way, because one of the biggest things I see at tables is the fighter barbarian. They are like, oh, we're not in initiative? Well, none of my skills apply here, and so guy with charisma, handle this. And that's fine, but as designers, we should be trying to find ways to get people involved in all 3 pillars of adventure. And so there we go, while also having an inroad to contributing to the social pillar, while having all of the regular tools rangers have to excel in exploration. All right, that's all mechanical fluff. Not really fluff, all mechanical jargon. Envoys are usually officially trained in the Haven of Might or some other organization to deal with storm giants, and are often commissioned or high or mid-rank officers in the Doral or Aryssan militaries. So this is giving us some world building, right? So yeah, they're rangers, right? But these aren't just like this isn't like, you know, your average like scruffy wood guy. This is, if you're an Envoy of Storms, you are most likely militarily trained. They've trained you to be a diplomat with this strange race of beings they have to work with. You're probably upper middle class-ish. You've got a good, you know, you're well spoken. You have ins with the military or political elite. Like, this is a different concept than most rangers. Of course, there's always then the caveat of, or you just have these abilities, figure it out. But when you're writing your descriptions, it should be, this is the average, this is what should be expected. If I were to tell you an NPC is this is what the world building should teach you. Like, you should know, oh, he's an Envoy of Storms, he's got a military rank most likely, he might have an attaché, or, you know, he might have some underling who does his dirty work. He's probably fairly well read. Like, this is what world building in your subclasses does for you. Because all of this stuff that we're discussing right here, right now, is now injected into this forever, right? Like, anyone using this has all of those preconceived notions built in that, again, as a DM, they could just say, screw it, don't like it. Or they can be like, yes, this is how this fantasy world works, and I like it, so we're going to just lift it and use it. Or Aryssan militaries. That some envoys are independent and may use their abilities to become adventurers, or to support some other objective besides diplomacy. The Envoy is a ranger that has access to psionic and mental powers most rangers will never access, and this gives them the edge in social encounters. Envoys excel in a world of exploration, and I like the word intrigue, so we'll use it again. And intrigue, while still having combat capabilities to support their allies and deal damage. The Envoy excels in many areas, and while some Rangers may do any single part of the class's role better, the Envoy opens new avenues for Rangers. All right, gives you a little idea. Here's what the class is. Here's what it does, and what is now. Now the next part, I forget whether this was in 3.5 or 4th edition, but they had this, like, maybe it's in 5th, and I just haven't looked at the hardback books in forever. They had this little, like, bulleted list, like, play a fighter if you want to be on the front lines in heavy armor, if you want, and I like that, and I steal it now for all of these subclasses. So play an Envoy of Storms if you want to handle delicate negotiations with physical force to back up your side. Right? You're a diplomat, but you're also a ranger who's going to get multi attacks and hunter's mark. So you've got a little bit of big speak softly, carry a big stick. You want to be able to support your allies psionically, and learn and use your psionic powers against enemies. You want to... Okay, so there we go. There's our mechanics, right? 4 is usually good. But this last one is always, you imagine your ranger as what we were saying before, right? As different from other rangers, being comfortable in society, or having some stature in the community, right? Like, this isn't like your hobo in the woods with a wolf, right? This is, again, like, I feel like I repeat myself when I do these, but there we go. That's, you imagine your ranger to be this. This is a good fit for you thematically. And because we need 4 bullets, you want to use psionic powers to augment your natural fighting prowess, right? So Rangers can already cast... Oh, hey, building an Envoy of Storms. Like all Rangers, an Envoy should focus on their hit and damage stat, dexterity or strength first. And all heroes benefit from Constitution. However, you will also want to not neglect wisdom and intelligence. So, okay, psionics usually are viewed as intelligence, but since we want these people to be diplomats, let's say wisdom and charisma, as many of your additional proficiencies and class features may benefit from these stats. As an Envoy, you generally do not need to invest in intelligence. That's fairly true, right? You need wisdom to negotiate, you need charisma, and then you need your strength or dexterity as your attacking stat, and let's face it, it's 5th edition, it's going to be dexterity, and then your constitution to not die. So, yes. So, nothing specific here, right? We're not going to add spell casting ability, can cast spells. Um, if we're gonna add additional specific spells, which I think I want to add detect thoughts and maybe a couple of other things if they're not already on the ranger spell list, we'll add that through the class feature just because those work better. And there we go. We now have our entry point, and let's just do a control F for agent to make sure we cleaned it all up. Now, we'll go ahead and create subclass. Now we get to do the long, boring parts. All right. So, again, we've got 3, 7, 11, and 15. So, at level 3, we need to give our ranger all of the things that this subclass says you should have. So, add a class feature, graduate of the Haven of Might. You have completed your formal training as an Envoy of Storms, or you have achieved these proficiencies through independent training. In either way, you gain proficiency in insight and I always forget what they call the skill. I think it's not diplomacy anymore, is it? Or is it still diplomacy? I think it's persuasion now, right? Yes. So you gain insight and persuasion. If you already have these proficiencies, you gain a different skill proficiency instead. In addition, so in addition, at let's say at level 11, you may gain expertise in insight or persuasion. So there you go. You're very good at this thing. So there we go. That's nothing to do with being multi-class. Level 3. No, Graduate of the Haven of Might is not a good name for this. Envoy skill training. There we go. All right, feature type. This is just granted. So we'll create the class feature and then we'll go ahead and do the fun parts. There we go. Modifiers. Add a modifier. We're going to add proficiency. Not in ability checks, in persuasion. And add a modifier. Proficiency. In insight. Then we can say has options. $11. Add an option. Name persuasion or insight expertise. At 11th level, choose to gain expertise in persuasion or insight. Acquired class level 11 is granted. Create option. All right. Envoy skill expertise. All right. we'll also get to see the fun of seeing, did that do what I think it should do? Save changes. You may choose to gain. So that may not have worked the way I wanted it to, but we're gonna we're gonna just power on, because the next thing we need here at level 3 is all of your cool psionic stuff. So uh, Envoy psionics. And starting at 3rd level, you gain the following benefits. Oh, it won't make bullets. You may. So, here's where I was talking about primeval awareness. So, all of this is. It's nice, but it uses a spell slot rangers don't get a lot of. And no one ever really feels like it's useful, right? Especially because it's fairly limited in what you can use your primeval awareness for. So, you starting at 3rd level, you gain a single use of primeval awareness at your highest spell level without having to use a spell slot. You may use primeval awareness to form a psychic link with a willing creature within line of sight. Within line of sight. For the duration, you may use your reaction whenever that creature deals damage to another creature affected by your hunter's mark, to have the friendly creature deal additional is it psychic is psychic damage a type? I want to say it is. Damage types. You might have to change it to force if psychic's a type of damage. Deals additional psychic damage equal to the damage dealt on your hunter's mark. In addition, the willing creature may use their reaction to use the help action, targeting you from within 30 feet. And that, I think, doesn't need the scale, because the scaling is built in. You gain a single use of primeval awareness, highest spell level without having to use a spell slot. And then you form a psychic link with a friend who they can help you by giving you, advantage on, whatever you need. And you let them use your Hunter's Mark to deal psychic damage. What kind of damage does Hunter's Mark do? I want to say it's untyped, and so. Yeah, you deal an extra damage. Okay. Finally, you may have your Hunter's Mark deal psychic damage. There we go. Envoy Psionics training. Nice, simple, and really powerful, I think, because it scales inherently. As your Hunter's Mark does more damage, it gets better. As your personal attack starts doing more damage, it scales better. And the other thing that's nice about this, Rangers have some decent reactions. They've got attacks of opportunity. They've got moving their hunter's mark if the target dies. I think that's a reaction. Oh no, you use a bonus action for that. So yeah, like there's not a lot of really good reactions out there. And on the people who are going to be doing basic attacks to trigger your hunters mark the most, your barbarians, your fighters, they've got attacks of opportunity, but maybe giving you help is better. Either way, more options are better. Uh, you may also telepathically communicate with this target for the duration. The duration is equal to the same duration as primeval awareness. If you are in your favored terrain, you may target an additional willing creature. So there we go. Your favorite terrain matters. Your primeval awareness is useful now. Plus, you get a free one, which I think is useful. I don't know. Might be too good, might not be good enough. And we're going to say this is 3. This probably should have been number 1. And feature type, this is just granted. Classes where options are known. Okay. Create class feature. I don't think you need anything else at level 3 to say you are now an envoy of storms. Let's look at what level detect thoughts is. I want to say I think it's level 2. It is 2nd level, and Rangers don't already get it for real, right? Yep, Rangers already don't get it. So, when do Rangers get their 2nd level spells? 5, right? Yeah, so they're gonna get delayed on getting detect thoughts. I think that's fine because it has to come on on 3, 7, 11, or 15. So yeah, I think that's fine. So let's look at what other classes are getting at. Other subclasses get at 7. Exceptional training, not that great. Hunter's a good thing to look at for level 7 as an example. Multi-attack defense, steel will. Also, not a whole lot of power really here, right? They're very conditional on level 7. So, I honestly think getting access to a really good spell might just be all we need. And it's all we're going to give them. Envoy Psionics. Starting at 7th level, you add Detect Thoughts to your Ranger spell list and always have it prepared. Alright. This is going to be a little bit harder to do. This is option 3. Feature type, granted. Create class feature. Add options, level scaling, spells, add a spell. Check thoughts. So we're adding detect thoughts. We don't need that. We don't need any of this. Additional description. Consume spell slot. Counts as it is always prepared. Why wouldn't it consume a spell slot? Yes, it consumes a spell slot. No restrictions. It is not infinite. Save. All right, And we may have skipped something important here on the psionics training. We did, because we need to add an action type. It's a general action, form psychic link, attack range, ranged, save type none, none of this, doesn't miss, it's not damage. Patient type. We're gonna say this is a bonus action. Um. Hmm. Okay, let's save that, and we'll come back to it. You may use a bonus action to use your primeval awareness ability to form to use the form psychic link action within 120 feet in line of sight. Line of sight is not required for that. Those are all important things because people will want to know how and when they can use things. All right, let's go back down and form psychic link. That's what we called the action up here. To all right, we may have just made the snippet the same as the description, but it's all important. Right, so let's go back to forming our psychic link. You may create a psychic. You create a psychic link with a willing creature within 100 and an additional creature if you are in your favorite. It's called favored terrain or favorite terrain. It's favored terrain. Class features. Favored terrain. For the duration, you may use your reaction whenever that. There we go. Little templated a little bit better. I really hate cluttering character sheets, but I feel like we need that as a well. You know what? I am currently happy not 120 feet. We have effect type. Long range, no. It's a bonus action. And it doesn't need a reset because it's keyed to your primeval awarenesses, which come back with spell slots. Here we go. There's the snippet, and then the rules are in the full description. Save. Go back. All right. So now we have 3 and 7, so now we need 11. Which again, we look at what you get at level 11. Bestial Fury is one of these things that's in theory really good, but may not actually end up being that great. And then Hunter at level 11, you get the thing you're probably here for, right? Your multi attacks on many targets. Both pretty good. What's Gloomstalker get at 11th? Oh, okay. So consistency is the key here on level 11 stuff. Neat. Didn't know some of these things existed. Yeah. Okay. That's all really good. So one of the things we want to do is we want to keep building on what we get as a ranger. So let's look at natural explorer improvement. You gain an additional. Oh, okay, just additional favored terrains. That's okay. And then hide in plain sight. All right, we're gonna focus here. Level 11 is giving you more party utility, and you're not really gonna get extra damage here at level 11. So add a class feature, Envoy leadership, starting at 11th level. Creatures you have a psychic link with may benefit from your natural stride and or lance stride is what it's called. We're not going to give them hide in plain sight and gain an additional and gain benefit from your natural stride, not land stride, right? We just saw that land stride. In addition, all you and all creatures that you have a psychic link with are immune to charm and have advantage against fear. It's not really that great. I'm going to admit, uh, I'm I'm feeling okay. Lion Stride is really good when it matters, right? Like letting your barbarian just walk through and entangle and beat on a caster is really good. Um, Being able to get through difficult terrain, all of that's really great. And immunity to charm and advantage against fear. Those are ribbons that are just sort of it's what we give. It's what we kind of give these sort of leader types as just things they're good at. But again, 11th level is pretty late for that immunity and advantage to come online. But if you don't have anyone else who's giving it, still pretty good. And again, at level 7, you got access to detect thoughts. So, you know, that's real. Detect thoughts, I think, is really quite good. Great class feature. And then our last thing is level 15, which if we go back to our ranger here, I don't think we want to give people Vanish through our Psychic Link. Because Vanish is really good. It's only hide as a bonus action. Yeah, I'm okay with giving people vanish. So, Envoy Mind Fog. Starting at 15th level. Your creatures that share your psychic link may use hide as a bonus action. In addition, you and creatures within your psychic affected by your psychic link have resistance to psychic damage. Again, it's a ribbon, it's nice. Everyone being able to hide as a bonus action. The people who'll take the most advantage of it already had cunning action. It's not that great. We're going to give them something else, though, at level 15, because, again, it just doesn't feel like a good capstone. What are we on? We are on our 5th ability. Here's create class feature. Right, so what else do we need? So at 11, we've got our expertise choice. You know what? The obvious thing that we need is Envoy Primeval Mastery. Snippet. You gain an additional use of Primeval Awareness at your highest spell level. This stacks with... I hate that I don't remember what I name things. It stacks with the additional use from... for a total of 2 additional uses of Primeval Awareness at your highest spell level. There you go. Super quick, super easy. We have a Psionic Ranger who makes his friends better, gets free uses of Primeval Awareness to either use his cool psychic stuff or gets to use his cool psychic stuff, or worst case scenario, actually use Primeval Awareness. And now we do the worst part, which is test Envoy of Storms. Homebrew content. None of this matters, so we're always going to be like an Aryssa because we don't really care, and it's the first thing we click. Going to be a Ranger. Let's start proficiencies. So the first thing we need to do is make sure that this is going to work right. So first favorite enemy, whatever, monstrosities, choose a language. We're good at elves, I don't know. Natural explorer will be in a forest. So it's important when you're testing this, by the way, especially if you've got things that grant skills, that you don't stop here and level all the way up. Go all the way through. Manual roll. Because remember, your background is going to also give you skills. So insight is already trained. So at level 3, and then at level 3, when we get the free skills, we should be prompted to choose a new skill. So Ranger, subclass, dice rolling, great, edit character. So level 2, do we have to choose something? Fighting style, whatever, thrown weapon fighting. Level 3, here we go. Let's make sure this is all working. Aryssa, Envoy of Storms. class feature proficiency removed. Was removed. Choose a new there we go. That worked. Choose a new proficiency in the class section. Okay. And it wrote insight. That's exactly what I wanted it to do. Our next thing comes at level 7. And we get another favorite enemy, right? Choose our level 6 option. We hate dragons, but we can talk to them because we hate them so much. Natural explorer, forest, dragons live in mountains, so whatever. Ability score improvement. We chose throwing. Again, none of this matters. It's just you want to make sure you fill everything out. Starting at 7th level, you add detect thoughts to your ranger spell list and always have it prepared. So here's the thing we need to now go check. Is that a true statement? Next. View character sheet. So we haven't chosen any spells. Features and traits. Yep, everything's uploaded. Spell casting, primeval awareness, ability score, detect thoughts, cast. Okay, it's going to use a spell slot. So now let's go to spells, manage spells. Why isn't it showing up here? All right, we'll need to fix that. But let's figure out. Well, it's showing up. When I hit cast, does it use the slot? It does use. Okay. It works. Maybe not perfectly, but it works enough for our purposes. Next up, level 11. Natural Explorer. Envoy Psionics, Envoy Skill Training, Ability Score Improvement. Item Flames, Envoy Leadership. Envoy. At 11, you may gain expertise in insight or persuasion, which did not pop up. All right, so we need to fix our level 11 and take a look at our level 7. And then level 15 really shouldn't be much because it's all just text. Envoy Primeval Mastery. Yeah, all right. So we need to fix our level 7 and our level 11, which is actually a level 3. So let's start with level 7. There we go. Counts as a known spell. That should, I assume, fix that. And I think the way to fix this Envoy skill training is instead of trying to do it on this line with the class feature options, because it did not work the way I wanted it to, we're just going to make Envoy skill expertise at level 11. So this needs to become 6 and 7. I feel like this went really quick, but I think it's because, again, Rangers don't have a whole lot exciting going on in their lives. Sort of like... There we go. Envoy leadership. Envoy skill expertise. You have continued to apply your formal training as a either in either way. Starting at 11th level, you may gain expertise in insight or persuasion. Now, I think did I screw that up? I did. I know. We seem to have come a little bit to a standstill here. Modifier, expertise, insight. Save. Persuasion. Required class level 11. Granted. Save changes. Aryssa. 337, 11, 11, 15, 15, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, save changes. My characters. Delete that one. Create a character. Standard. We do want homebrew content, or this whole experiment doesn't work. We're still in Aryssa. Ranger. Now I believe we can just skip down here to level 11. And choose an option. Oh, we won't be able to test it for a while because it's not going to pop up for a little bit while the server gets updated. But rest assured, it should now work, or at least the text will pop up correctly enough so that you can try it. So let's go back and delete that unnecessary character. Now for the fun part. Did we do everything right? Creations. Type. Subclasses. Filter creation. Envoy skill training. Psionics. Leadership. Skill expertise. There you go. See, you choose one of the two. Text is slightly smaller. Formatting's ugly, but whatever. Mind Fog, Primeval Mastery, and click Share with Community. Submit. Did we do it right? We did it right. And there we go. That is our Envoy of Storms. So, again, I always say that this is probably a very boring thing to watch someone sit here and build all of this, write it together, but if you watched, thank you. I know the beginning is probably a little more interesting when I'm actually talking and as opposed to fighting with D&D Beyond, but I don't know when I'll be back to make our next subclass, but there we go. Ranger is in draft. It's not done. I'm sure those of you who make things are fully aware that things are often never done, especially when you don't have a deadline driving you. So, yeah. Thank you all for listening if you did. Otherwise, I'm just glad to be doing this because otherwise, if I don't have something forcing me to, like in this case, streaming it, I just won't. Anyway, thank you. Take care and have fun with D&D, whether you're using cool homebrew stuff or not.